Welcome to the Christian Men at Work podcast, where I interview men from all walks of life with varying job titles who have one thing in common. They are all choosing daily to live out their Christian faith through their work, and because of that, they are leading, prospering, glorifying God, and experiencing joy and purpose in their work. And you can too. Men at Work, welcome back to episode number 16. It's great to be back with you. Before I introduce the interview today, I've got three quick comments. First of all, on my YouTube channel, I'm going to begin a Wednesday work advice segment starting this week. So if you've never checked out my YouTube channel, there's a lot of videos on there, and I'm going to start doing a brief commentary, 5 minutes or less, just something that'll be helpful specifically for your work. Second thing is just a reminder, if you have any needs for graphic arts online or otherwise, please contact Dorothy Smith at her website at dboutonsmith.weebly.com. That's dboutonsmith.weebly.com. And then the third thing is a reminder about our prayer line. Haven't had anyone call in yet, so I don't have anything to play on this episode. And, we'll see if this takes off or not, but it's something I would like us to try out. And so I encourage you to call in to 641-715-3900, extension 524-645-pound. And if you have a comment about the episode, either this episode or a previous episode, or you need prayer or would like to offer prayer to someone else, the number is 641-715-3900, extension 524-645-pound. Today I'm going to be interviewing Scott Ehrlich. I met Scott as part of my involvement volunteering for the Convention of States project, and he was impressed me because he was just really helpful. He would reach out to me and encourage me, and we had some great conversations, and he really interested me, and so I asked him to do an interview. Scott currently resides in the state of Florida with his beautiful wife and their 4 amazing daughters. Scott has been employed for the past decade as a route salesman for a national brand. Meeting people is one of Scott's favorite activities. It gives him the opportunity to learn and grow on various levels. And Scott's passions include his faith in Jesus Christ, history, philosophy, politics, and literature. And he is very knowledgeable about all those topics, and we touched a little bit on that in the interview. So I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Let's get right to the interview.
All right, Scott, thanks a lot for joining us on the call. I wanted to start off by just asking you a question about how you became a Christian. And I understand from us talking earlier that it happened in 2011 as a result of a friendly debate. Can you, I guess, first tell us about your background and a little bit about your life leading up to that interesting story about your debate, and tell us about the friendly debate.
Okay. Well, it wasn't really necessarily a debate, but I guess I'll give you my background first. I actually grew up in the Jewish faith, more of a cultural stance than anything. I was bar mitzvahed. Going to synagogue as, growing up from time to time. It was more of, celebrating the holidays. As I kind of grew older, I, kind of lost touch, I guess, pretty much after I got bar mitzvahed. It dwindled out. And then I was just kind of the world, focusing on just kind of everyday life, going to work and, keeping in contact with friends. I did end up having my first daughter I got married when I was 21, I believe, and then my first daughter came about when I was 22. So then I ended up having another daughter, and I guess this is all leading up to my conversion to the faith. So pretty much the marriage didn't go, you know, the way marriage was intended. And, you know, when you don't have a solid foundation in faith, it's kind of just, you know, based off of, I guess, the pursuit of whatever is good at that time. And, you know, I've always kind of had a longing for the faith, you know, as the marriage was dwindling out. And, you know, being an American, we all hear about, you know, the story of Christ. You got to be pretty much, in America at least, hiding under a rock if you don't know the story. So it basically came down to a divorce and a custody battle for my kids. And the gospel was preached to me actually by my current wife. I did remarry, but when the divorce was happening, it was me looking at my daughters and basically saying, you know, there's nothing that I wouldn't do for them. I'm going to fight for them. I'm going to do whatever I have to do in order to be a good father to them. And in that conversation with my, you know, later on, I didn't realize she was going to be my wife at the time, but talking to her, she was pretty much just asking questions about, you know, my former faith and the situation. And basically that's when I realized God as being a father figure, that, you know, regardless of, you know, what wrongs we've done, that there's nothing that's going to separate, you know, his love from us. You know, even, you know, I look at my own kids, no matter what they do, no matter how much they might disappoint me at times, I'm always going to love them. I might be disappointed with them sometimes, and there might be things in life that I really, really dislike that they're doing, but my heart's always going to be after them, and that's when I connected it to the Father's love. And so it was a gradual process. It wasn't, you know, the next day I started believing. She actually bought me my first Bible, and then I started attending her church, and then the rest is history. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's maybe not a debate, but it ended up pointing you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's why I said it wasn't necessarily a debate, but I do like to debate ideas, and one of the foundations, I think, for me personally, when I'm in a debate, is that you have a strong conviction of what you're debating. If you're not sure of yourself, then you're not going to convince anybody else. And the other thing to do in a debate is to, as long as it's not a formal debate, ask questions and make people answer those questions so that they question their stance and if they really do believe what they're saying. So I guess more being on the offensive rather than defensive.
Yeah, and I've heard it said you can't argue someone into the faith, and I've heard it said that asking questions is a good one. One of the questions I heard that's a good one to ask is, "Are you sure about that?" That was actually one of the people I interviewed. If rather than arguing with someone, just keep asking them, "Are you sure about that?" And they kind of answer their own question. But
yep, that's definitely a good way to go about it.
Yeah. Well, besides your faith, I know that your passions include history, philosophy, politics, and literature. What excites you about those topics, and how long would you say you've been passionate about them?
All right. Well, I've always been interested in history growing up, but I really didn't seem to have a true passion until actually I became a Christian. So when I became a Christian, it wasn't just, oh, it sounded good, let me just go ahead and the story sounded good, I'm convinced. I'm more analytical. So in doing that, I actually studied every single worldview that there was. I studied early church history. I read theologians, Augustine and Jerome, and studied the works of C.S. Lewis, who's very famous, and probably pretty familiar with Ravi Zacharias as far as currently doing. So, listening to them, and I've always been drawn back to not just taking people's word for it, but actually reading the original text without any commentary. So I continue to do that. And when you're learning about history, it's hard not to take politics into, anything that's history related ends up having an element of politics of why these things are happening. And so, moving over from Christianity, you look at different governments. You look at, Herodias with Greece, Aristotle, and I really like American history because it has kind of a blend of it all. So, that's when you kind of get into the founders, and see, this is where I kind of go into philosophy, then into politics. So the founders, they read stuff like Montesquieu, Locke, Aristotle, Cicero, people of that nature. So I started reading all of them and some of the current ones as well. And I guess as Aristotle would say is, what separates us from everybody else is the thing of reason. As all the other animals on the planet, they're just say a dog or a cat or anything like that. But humans, we can think, we can reason, we can look at the past, we can imagine the future, and we can ask questions. And when we do things, we can ponder why. I think it was Socrates always asked, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Because it's good. Well, why is it good? And so when you think of why it's good, even a mass murderer could think that what he's doing is good, unless you have a standard to base that off of. And so for a Christian, that standard is Christ. And then, the big part of, history is being able to articulate your ideas. And so that's why language is so important. And you look at the English language, it has Latin and Greek roots to it. I really enjoy reading some of the ancients like Homer and Virgil and Dante. And, it's not, what they're saying is very insightful in it, and you look within. But also just the way it is written, the language is very beautiful.
Yeah, it makes me want to go do some reading. I've heard those names but I've never taken the time to really read up on those philosophers, and so it sounds very interesting. I'm sure you get a much bigger picture if you do that.
Oh yeah, it's definitely. Well, another aspect to me is that prior to my Christian conversion, I really kind of was just, two-dimensional. I really didn't. I really think much of what was, beyond anything. So when you kind of dive down into human nature and into thought, into why we're here, and it just kind of takes you on that journey. So. But it's definitely.
I can see why you like Ravi Zacharias. What's his phrase? Let my people think, I think.
Yeah, he has that podcast. Yeah. Let my people think. He's actually going to be here. I'm in Gainesville. The end of January, I think he is. He's speaking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, he's great. Well, I met you because of our mutual interest in a political cause, I guess you'd call it, the Convention of States Project. Can you tell I guess, our listeners what Convention of States is all about?
Yeah, the Convention of States Project is a political organization. Their goal is basically using Article 5 of the Constitution in order to propose amendments. In Article 5, you have two ways you can do that. Either you can get 2/3 of Congress to propose amendments, then go for ratification, which is the second half, 3/4 of the states ratify it. Or you could have state legislators call a convention, they come up with amendments that's agreed upon by a majority, and then it goes to ratification and becomes part of the U.S. Constitution. part of the Convention of States project, our resolution is different than other ones in the past, is that we're not pushing a specific subject. We're actually, we have three subject matters, but it's not like there's like competitors, kind of like a balanced budget. It's just that one specific amendment they're pushing. We actually have subject matters, which is to impose fiscal restraints, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and then the third one is limit terms of office for federal officials and members of Congress. So right now we have 12 states have passed the resolution. We're starting to get into the new legislative session. I think the first state starts in January 2nd. We got North Carolina going back again, South Carolina. There's a big push in Mississippi right now. So it's a completely grassroots effort. But, if you kind of want to go beyond that, though, is why call a convention? Why have, rein in the federal government? Or say, a lot of people notice that there's so many different things wrong with the government. Everybody's complaining. I always call it the symptoms rather than the disease. So our as far as being a conservative, our thought process is basically rooted in the Declaration of Independence. In the Declaration of Independence, if you read the preface, basically it's saying that all men are created equal. We are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights, and that it's consent by the governed. And then if you read through it, you can see that the framework of the Constitution is in the Declaration, where there's a misuse of the separation of powers as you go through the particulars of it. And that's why a lot of conservatives, like, at least in the 21st century, like Calvin Coolidge and Ronald Reagan, they always pointed back to the founding, the roots of what made America great. But the three main attacks on our way of life was actually at the founding, where the British turned on us, and then we ended up having a revolution, because the founders at that time, they were reading Aristotle and Locke and Montesquieu, and so that was already ingrained in the colonists. And then the second one would be the Civil War. That's why you have Lincoln always pointing back to the founding. And then now we have the progressive movement, which is pre and post 1960s. And so that's why you have the administrative state. This is why you have statists who like big government. You have all these policies. You see, big progressives like Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, the Great Society, pushing these agendas, which is basically bankrupting our country and eviscerating our Constitution and our founding principles. And so if people really took the time to study it, they realized that government closer to the people makes for happier people, and limited government is the best way to go, and you'll have the most freedom. So, but people don't realize, though, there's just like there's philosophers on the constitutional side, like those that I named. There's also philosophers on the other side. And so if you realize what they're doing, like Crowley, Karl Marx, Rousseau, and so if you study some of the philosophers on their side, you can kind of see how, why they're attacking us, our way of life. And then, John Dewey, he's actually the one who pretty much changed the way our education system's going. So that's why, if you, other than our debt, being $20 trillion, our education isn't what it used to be. There was the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, same time that the Constitution was being written. The they were actually giving away land and giving a portion for education. So education wasn't supposed to be federally ran. And so there's an attack on proper education. But
yeah, I guess
but a lot of our supporters in convention states, they realize this, and a lot of, at least in our Florida team, we have a lot of homeschooling moms. We actually, my wife and I, we homeschool our younger daughters. But they like Michael Ferris, who's a big advocate for homeschooling.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it comes down to freedom. I mean, that's the way I look at it. And and like you said, government closer to the people is just works better. And one of the things that really impressed me by my limited involvement in this so far was just how when I reached out to my state senators and representatives, they talked to me and emailed me and met with me. And try doing that with someone at the federal level. So but yeah, you articulate that message really well, so I appreciate that. Well, tell us about your current job, because we like to talk about work on this podcast. What do you do, and how long have you been doing it?
Well, actually, I do DSD, route sales. I've been with my current company for 9 years, but I've been doing it for a total of, probably 12 years total. So basically, I have a route. It expands through Central Florida, and the customers are set up, and I go around and make deliveries and make them happy. So, which puts for a lot of drive time and being out there on the road, talking with people, which is the greatest. Well, I like the aspect of two reasons. One, I'm by myself, so I don't have somebody, down my back. It's pretty much just me out there, being responsible and knowing what I have to do and getting it done. And then the second part is, my customers, I've been with them for so long that, they end up becoming like friends. It's like we all know that we're doing a job, but, it's more like, oh, hey, how's the kids? How's your granddaughters? Or, you kind of get to know them, what their hobbies are. Oh, did you go hunting this weekend? Or, how was catching any good fish? So it ends up becoming more like, going to visit good friends rather than here I am at work again.
Yeah, that sounds great. Can you share a tip for sharing the gospel at work? Have you ever shared the gospel while you're at work? I guess that'd be my one question.
Yeah, I have. See, the thing about the gospel is you don't need to, it's not something you can force upon somebody. And if you start, doing coming at them with scriptures or telling them the way their living life is wrong, or, you see the people on the side of the road turn or burn, that's not, that's not the message of the gospel. It's good news. And when you have good news, don't you like to share with everybody? I mean, if you go on any social media sites, most people are sharing good news. They want to share their experiences, or they want to share their kids, or their, what they're doing this week, or that they're on vacation. Everybody loves good news, and that's the gospel. It's good news. And so we, as Christians, we want to be able to share that. And so a lot of times you just want to meet people where they're at. And C.S. Lewis does this a lot. He actually the Apostle Paul too. In the ancient world, a lot of people were believing in multiple gods and had their religious views, and he would be more like, well, you worship 5 or 6 gods or 10 gods or whatever it might be, but you kind of got it right, except for there's only one true God. His name is Jesus Christ, and so he would just kind of meet people on that level. So talking to people, especially if somebody has something really, on their heart, heavy on their heart, they'll want to talk to you. And if they feel comfortable to you, there's going to be that bridge, to where you can communicate with that person. And you can basically speak, scriptures to them, but not, indirectly, because it's truth, and it reveals your heart. And so people will notice that. And people will also notice the way you handle yourself, the way you act, the way they'll realize that there's something different about you compared to everybody else. And what is that? And then they'll start asking questions. And it's not necessarily, one conversation and then they're, bam, radically changed. Every week I'll see them. They'll ask me more questions. They'll ask me more questions until eventually, they'll be like, what is it, And then, you go to church and did it. You can invite them to your church. Or if you're not from that area, kind of guide them if they want a Bible, you can point them in the right direction and kind of give them the startup kit. But there's more. There's people who plant seeds, there's people who water, and then there's people who reap the harvest. So, sometimes you just throwing seeds, sometimes you're doing a little watering as you go along. But I think it's how you present it. I guess being the Christmas season. Being the light of the world, we go out there and to the darkness, and the dark has no choice but to run and hide. The light reveals everything. So that, as Christians, is what we need to do. Go out in this dark world.
Well said. I agree. All right. This is a question I've been asking several times. Do you have a favorite joke that you could share that our men could use next time they're at work?
So as far as the jokes are concerned, I don't have a specific one.
Okay.
I think I've got to the point where I have 4 daughters, and I kind of could hear myself being my own parents because I make like corny jokes. But just having a good time. I mean, you're in a situation. I mean, just be yourself, in a respectful manner, and you're representing the kingdom. So, just make sure you portray that and internalize it.
Sounds good. Do you have a favorite scripture?
I do, actually. My favorite scripture is from Proverbs 17:28, which is, even fools are thought wise if they can keep silent and discern if they hold their tongues. So basically, I look at that scripture as a lot of times, we're moving from glory to glory, and a lot of people don't take the time to listen, but they're more interested in responding or talking. And a lot of times they don't really know what they're saying, or they might be saying too much too fast. So it's a good idea to, take a minute before you speak, listen to everything that's being said to you. And then doing homework and researching. Me today, compared to 5 years ago, I'm like another person. So the things I could say on a political level is completely different after reading, all the philosophers, reading, all the documents. If you saw my library, you'd be like, oh my goodness, I have so many books I could probably read for about 10 years and still have more books to read. So just be careful on what you're saying and have an ear to hear.
That's very, very good advice. I might adopt that one. That's a good one. Well, since you sounds like you travel a lot for your work, can you recommend maybe 1 or 2 things that you really like to listen to when you're driving?
Yes. Okay, so this is a personal thing with me. Is prior to me becoming a Christian, I felt like I've wasted a lot of time. Whether it was movies or popular music. So I don't like to waste any time. So I don't read. I rarely read unless it has historical context. I rarely read fiction. Most of the things I read is nonfiction. if I happen to actually watch a movie other than with my kids, it's a documentary or it's based off of some sort of historical event. And the same happens to be with what I listen to when I'm on the road. There's a couple of good podcasts that I listen to. As far as on the conservative side, the Ben Shapiro show. He has a daily podcast, I guess, Being Convention of States. Probably heard of Mark Levin. Then there's also the National Center for Constitutional Studies. They have a podcast which is nonpartisan, which they have some pretty good debates. Larry Arnn does a podcast. He's from Hillsdale College. They also do have online courses where you can just download the audio. They have everything on there pretty much. And then there's also another podcast that he doesn't post very often. It's called Philosphy This, and he doesn't do it. He's nonpartisan. He just basically tells it the way it is. So he's been doing one on the Frankfurt School, which has been quite interesting. So seeing different perspectives. And then, other than listening to people talk about all sorts of different subjects, musically, I really like kind of 50s bluesy country. But recently, my oldest daughter has been really into classical music, such as like Beethoven. Well, right now Beethoven is her favorite. So I never played an instrument. I have no idea what I probably couldn't even guess the instruments that other than like the piano, what they're playing. But I see the beauty in it. And so I've been kind of listening to that, and it's good to kind of just get away from the noise and just kind of listen to the beauty of the music. So
sounds good. A lot of good ones there. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Well, so do you have any, as we kind of wrap things up here, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners?
Final thoughts? Let's see, final thoughts. I would say that in order to go out into the world and profess Christ, that you need to fill yourself up spiritually and protect yourself spiritually. And so you should surround yourself with men of God, people who are going to encourage you and uplift you, people who are going to give you good advice, people who are going to have your best interests in mind. Probably a lot of younger listeners might, when you go to school, you'll have that negative reinforcement. People like, oh yeah, don't worry about doing the test. You don't even have to study. And people can, if you want to believe something, you can justify any behavior you want. But I would make sure that you surround yourself with positive influences. I would make sure that you're grounded in the Word and constantly learn. I mean, that's how God created us, is to learn. So that thing of reason. So constantly, dive into the scriptures, devotionals, get plugged in with a church. When people who go to church aren't perfect, that's why we're at church. If we thought we were all perfect, we wouldn't be at church. And I really don't like when people say, well, look at that person, or look at that preacher, or look at that person, they call themselves a Christian. You have to deal with, your own position and your own relationship with Christ first. And then in a non-judging way, you help those around you and you encourage those around you. And, being part of our church family, there's people that, I might have, just been high and by, and then there's a season in my life that we're there every day helping them out, or they're helping me out, and, being part of the kingdom of God, be part of community. So, but I guess that's my final thought.
Oh, that's a good one. Hey, if someone wanted to talk with you further about anything that we've discussed tonight, how would they go about getting a hold of you?
Well, you could email me at my name, Scott Ehrlich, at rocketmail.com. You can also look me up on Facebook, or you can give me a call, 352-286-5686. 7983.
All right. Thanks a lot for your time, Scott.
You're welcome. You have a good one. Bye-bye.
Yep, you too. Bye.
Men at Work, if you have an interest in history or politics like I do, I'm sure you got something out of this interview with Scott, and I thought Scott also had some real good nuggets there in terms of just interacting with people one-on-one while you're at your job. And before we go, I wanted to remind you about our prayer line, which is 641-715-3900, extension 524-645#. If you'd like to make a comment about the episode today, if you need prayer and you'd like us to pray for you, or if you want to offer prayer to someone else that has called in, feel free to call in anytime. And that'll take care of this episode. Look forward to next time. God bless.